The other big story this morning, of course, is the death of Jim Bolger, the former Prime Minister, 1990 to 1997, leader of the National Party from 1986 to 1997. And I've read a lot of lies, can I just say this morning. I don't think I've read as many lies about a dead person as I've ever heard. I thought Ruth Richardson's one was the best one. Ruth Richardson and Jim Bolger hated each other. There was no placatory, let's make up into the future. Ruth Richardson's announcements this morning, I thought, dear, you're either demented or alternatively, you are a really amazing person, Ruth, because you've found something deep in your heart that you've said just because you think it should be said. Just the lies that are told about people when they die are just remarkable. I'm not going to sit here and give a panegyric to Jim Bolger. He was a pretty average Prime Minister. He was a Prime Minister, though, for 7 years. He was a successful politician in that respect. He was rolled by Jenny Shipley in 1997, ironically because he had made up with another former political enemy, Winston Peters, and they seemed to be making a decent fist of running the country. But the National Party decided that we're making too much of a decent fist, and so they rolled Jim Bolger in 1997, and the first MMP coalition just collapsed in a screaming heap, went over the cliff as a consequence. One of the things to understand about Jim Bolger, and no one's talked about it this morning, of course they bloody haven't, is he was an Irish Catholic. And I'm stunned that all the political commentators have missed out on that particular bit. He was an Irish Catholic in all senses of the word. He had a Catholic education, but an Irish Catholic education. He inherently and instinctively distrusted the English, didn't like them, largely because he'd been imbued upon Irish history taught to him by his Irish mother. And it's one of the reasons why he was never accepted. In fact, it's the only reason that he never accepted a Queen's honour. Normally, it would be Sir James Brendan Bolger, or, Count Bolger, or whatever it might be, or OBE even. Never accepted a title from the Crown. And he didn't accept a title from the Crown because the Irish of that Irish Catholic background was very strong in him. He didn't like the Crown. Really interesting, isn't it? So I think he got the Order of New Zealand because that was a indigenous, indigenous is the wrong word, a native, a local honour that was given or created by the New Zealand government. So it wasn't imbued with imperial or colonial connection. But there you go. That's his background to that as well. Listen, I never respected him. It's not that I didn't like him, because like and respect are two different things. But he was also and we had lots of clashes. And so I'm not going to suddenly say, oh, we got on like a house on fire, because we didn't. I do feel sorry for his wife, Joan Bolger, who I have to say is an incredibly decent woman, and for his children. But I'm not going to create suddenly a myth about who Jim Bolger was or wasn't in our relationship. It was a fractured relationship, and it was bitter at times because I fought many of the changes that he made when he was the Prime Minister. But he's the last of the uneducated Prime Ministers. He and Jenny Shipley, who rolled him. Jenny Shipley, I think, just got school cert, failed UE. You can see that. Jim Bolger, I think he got school cert and left school at 15. I don't even know if he attempted to school cert. But really, they were the last of the uneducated Prime Ministers. All the consequent Prime Ministers, Clark, Key, English, Ardern, Hickams and Luxon, all had university degrees, and I guess the next one will as well. But he was the last of a generation, really, along with Jenny Shipley. And it was ironic, really, that Jenny Shipley rolled him because she sort of came from the same ilk in many ways, and eventually had the same outcome. He fell out with the National Party in a big way after he was left. He felt betrayed, and he was betrayed. He was over on a trade trip or trade mission to Russia and came home to find out that the caucus had got together and said, you've got to go. And for no better reason, I have to say, than they didn't like the fact that New Zealand First was in coalition with them, which rather misunderstood the whole purpose of why they were cabinet ministers at the time, because it was New Zealand First that had saved them in 1996. But it doesn't matter. Put that to one side. He came back and was very bitter about it. And that bitterness exuded to the fact that when Helen Clark said, "Would you take over Kiwi Bank, please?" And New Zealand Post, he said yes. And the Nats were really pissed off at that, can I tell you? Oops, I've just offended the Broadcasting Standards Authority again. So there you go. He is dead. He died at 90. He will join the Pantheons. He won't be a great Prime Minister, but then have there ever been one since, well, I don't know, Mickey Joseph Savage perhaps? Julius Vogel? Richard Seddon? Is there any modern Prime Minister that we'd look at and go, oh my God, you were amazing? No. Holyoake probably, but then it was a benign time for economics. Anyhow, those are my thoughts this morning on both the Broadcasting Standards Authority and on the death of James Brendan Bolger. It's always sad for the family, but I think the number of lies that have been told and the number of invented histories that I've read in the last 12 hours, God, this is the mainstream media for you. If you haven't got fact, let's make up fiction. And I've seen a lot of it in the last wee while.